I rarely watch cartoons and have never reviewed them before. But now, it seems, there is a reason. The cartoon Moana 2 is coming out. And why not discuss it, actually? The first part of Moana was quite warmly received by critics and viewers and collected almost $700 million at the worldwide box office, which may not be a phenomenal result, but is quite solid. And, it would seem, did this cartoon even need any sequel? After all, the story turned out to be quite complete. And in general, the cartoon is unlikely to last more than one part. But we live in the era of sequels, prequels and other quadriquels, and therefore there is no need to be surprised. If anyone is not aware, they are already preparing a movie adaptation with The Rock Johnson in the lead role. Like it if you are waiting. Let's discuss how the second part turned out, and whether there is a reason to watch it, or you can safely skip it. And before we begin, I kindly ask every viewer to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Your activity is very valuable and important. Thank you in advance and enjoy watching. The first part of the cartoon told us about the adventures of a girl named Moana, the daughter of the leader of a small tribe on an island in the Pacific Ocean. In order to save lives on her native island, she was forced to go on a dangerous sea voyage in the company of the demigod Maui. She had to cross the ocean, fight terrible monsters and break an ancient spell. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of this cartoon. Yes, it can please the viewer with beautiful and high-quality animation, chemistry between the characters of Moana and Maui and a couple of memorable songs. But this, again, if you watch the original. But in terms of history, everything here is quite conservative and predictable. In Moana, there are essentially only two main characters, and in places there is not enough event. Moana is too ideal a main character, promoting feminist messages. As the plot progresses, she does not develop and does not learn any lessons for herself, unlike the character Maui, who does learn these lessons and changes by the end of the cartoon, becoming a better version of his former self. The cartoon, for the most part, will be interesting only to the smallest audience. It does not really have much to offer to adult viewers. Although, perhaps, many will disagree with me. An interesting fact is that the script for the first part was originally written by Taika Waititi, but he was forced to leave the project. His version of the script was ultimately heavily reworked. He wanted to build the conflict on the confrontation between Moana and her four brothers, but in the end, the scriptwriters removed this plotline and decided to make the central theme of the cartoon the search for oneself. In general, this is a fairly basic problematic, time-tested. Why not? Moana bravely leads her people on long journeys across the sea, takes care of their well-being and is almost taking on the role of the leader of the tribe. Having gathered with all the people in a cave, Moana's father is preparing for the ceremony. He must award his daughter the title of leader of the land in Si Tau Tai. But at that moment lightning strikes, after which she sees a dream. In the vision, she is visited by a whale shark, the spirit of Tau Tai's ancestor Wasa. During his life, Wasa tried to unite the peoples of different islands. He asks Moana to continue his mission and sends the girl in search of the mysterious island of Matuvate, cursed by the god of storms. Initially, the sequel to Moana was supposed to become a series, and the artists of the first part even began to prepare it. But the final result greatly impressed Bob Iger, who insisted on the release of a full-length sequel. As a result, the material ready for the series was reassembled into a full-length cartoon. Moana 2 is still a visually beautiful and bright cartoon, which manages to be interesting in places and entertain viewers, especially younger ones. Several new locations and creatures appear, which are well executed. Humor is also present in the cartoon. Yes, there is not much of it, but overall it is not bad and comparable to the first part. Several new characters were introduced into the plot, which, of course, lack development, but which quite successfully dilute the events and do not seem too superfluous. Some of what worked in the first part works here too. However, there is a certain but. The plot of the cartoon is much inferior even to the first part, which in this regard was not some kind of standard. The plot does not feel very interesting, rather it is built on a scrupulously verified and archaic dramaturgy. It does not go beyond the framework, but moves along the beaten paths, tested by years. The authors do not greatly expand the world shown in the first part and do not even seem to try to surprise the viewer with anything. Perhaps it was worth making a series out of Moana. There would be much more opportunity to develop both the characters and the world around them. But the industry dictates its own terms, and a full-length cartoon is an enterprise, in all likelihood, much more profitable. Again, it will be interesting to see the box office. Will viewers be ready to go to a rather average product, or will they prefer to wait for a digital release? Much less time is devoted to the interaction of Moana and Maui than in the first film, and this does not benefit. After all, it was their duet that was interesting to watch. The musical numbers also became less memorable, and it is unlikely that anything from the soundtrack of the second part will become as big a hit as the song Welcome performed by Scala. And another point that personally raises big questions for me is the absence of an antagonist as such in the cartoon, which is why the drama suffers. After all, there is no global conflict that would be interesting to watch. Yes, Moana encounters obstacles and all sorts of secondary characters on her way, who could act as antagonists, but conflicts with them are quickly resolved and they, in fact, do not become such. And who is ultimately the main antagonist here? The sea? In general, the cartoon is more disappointing than charming. Moana 2 is a very unnecessary sequel, which in many ways is inferior even to the first part, in my opinion. At the same time, the cartoon will probably appeal to children, as well as fans of the first film. If you want to watch some animation, but there are no options at all, because everything has already been watched and rewatched several times, then this cartoon can be such an option. But personally, I would advise watching the recent The Wild Robot or the very recent Transformers one. You will get much more pleasure from watching. Thank you all for your attention. All the best and see you in the new films.